Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. In today's deep dive, we're taking a truly wide-angle view, and believe me, it's going to stretch your mind. We're journeying from the mind-bending concepts of the quantum realm right down to the intricate dance of geopolitical flashpoints that are, reshaping global alliances. Then we'll move from the deep ocean, surprisingly fragile ecosystems to the nuanced and often quite contentious debates around human rights and economic power. Our mission, as always, is to distill the crucial insights from a stack of diverse sources and get you well-informed, quickly, and thoroughly. We want to ensure you walk away with not just facts, but a deeper understanding of what truly drives our world right now.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, if we connect the dots across these diverse sources, is how these seemingly unconnected threads, well, they weave together. They actually paint a vivid, albeit sometimes challenging picture of the world's most pressing scientific, political, and societal shifts happening in real time. We're looking at everything from groundbreaking scientific research that could fundamentally redefine our understanding of existence to the intricate dance of international diplomacy that's constantly being recalibrated, and the very real economic and social impacts that reverberate across continents and into our daily lives. Our goal isn't just to present information, it's to cut through that information overload. We want to help you grasp what truly matters, why it's happening, and what it might mean for the future.
Now let's dive straight into something that will genuinely make you question everything you thought you knew about. Well, everything. Here's where it gets really interesting, and I promise you, this isn't science fiction. What if objective reality isn't what we thought it was? What if it's, dare I say, a moving target you can actually shape? It sounds wild, I know.
It does sound wild, yeah. But it's grounded in some of the most cutting-edge research happening in quantum physics. Our classical understanding of reality, where everything has a definite fixed state independent of us, well, that's being profoundly challenged. The core concept we're grappling with here is the behavior of particles in the quantum realm. Unlike the objects we encounter in our everyday lives, a chair, a table, a planet, these tiny particles don't exist in a definite state until they are observed or measured.
Until they're observed.
Exactly. Until that moment, they exist in what physicists call a superposition, basically a spectrum of all possible probabilities simultaneously. It's only upon the act of observation that these particles seemingly choose a particular state. It's a phenomenon famously known as the collapse of the wave function. And this isn't just some theoretical quirk. It implies a profound role for the observer in shaping, or at least sort of manifesting reality at its most fundamental level. It's a concept that forces us to reevaluate the very nature of existence itself.
So, if I understand this, our act of looking at something, even at the subatomic level, isn't just passively observing, but actively participating in determining its state. That's a lot to process.
It absolutely is. And this mind-bending research goes even further. It touches upon the theoretical implications of time reversal in quantum systems. We naturally experience time as a linear, unidirectional flow, right? Past to future.
Right, the arrow of time.
Exactly. But some of these studies suggest that under certain very specific quantum conditions, processes that were once thought irreversible could potentially be reversed. They theorize that two distinct eras of time could emerge from quantum systems. Now, this isn't about building a time machine like in the movies.
Okay, good.
But it challenges our traditional understanding of thermodynamics and the very nature of time itself. The theoretical implications are profound, suggesting possibilities for correcting errors or, even more incredibly, altering events post-occurrence by manipulating these quantum states at the smallest scales. It fundamentally blurs the lines between what's done and what could still be undone in the quantum universe.
Okay, my head officially feels like it's spinning. Seriously. So if particles are playing hopscotch with reality and time might have multiple directions, what about their connections? Is it all just chaos, or is there like a method to this quantum madness?
Not chaos, no. It points to a deeper, more interconnected order, actually. Which leads us to another truly astonishing phenomenon: quantum entanglement. This has had physicists scratching their heads for decades, and for good reason. Entanglement, it's this baffling concept.
Right.
Two or more particles become so interlinked that they share the same fate no matter how far apart they are.
The spooky action at a distance thing?
That's the one. What happens to one instantly affects the other, seemingly defying the speed of light. Now, the new research amplifies this. It demonstrates that entangled particles don't just share their state in pairs. They can repeatedly transfer that shared state across extended networks.
Across networks.
Yeah. So the information isn't just shared once between two particles, it can cascade. It builds a much larger, incredibly interconnected web of entangled particles, maintaining their shared information integrity across vast distances.
Wow. Okay. So what's the big picture here? We're not just talking about cool science fiction anymore, are we? We're talking about practical applications that could completely change how we interact with information and the world. Maybe one day my internet connection will finally work flawlessly because of quantum entanglement. A guy can dream, right?
One can certainly dream. And the dream for flawlessly fast and secure communication is very real in this context. The significance of this breakthrough for quantum communication and computing is enormous. It allows for scalable quantum networks without degrading information integrity, which has been a major hurdle in quantum tech development. Imagine a future where data can be transmitted with unprecedented security and speed, or where incredibly complex computations can be performed far beyond the capabilities of even our most powerful classical supercomputers today.
Like truly unhackable communication.
That's the potential, yes. It could revolutionize cryptography, or facilitate distributed quantum computing, where different quantum processors collaborate seamlessly across a network. It could even lead to advancements in quantum sensor arrays, providing incredibly precise measurements for everything from advanced medical diagnostics to environmental monitoring, at a level we can barely conceive of now.
That's incredible.
And speaking of dreaming big, this isn't just an academic pursuit in isolation. Nations are actively vying for leadership in these cutting-edge fields. Russia, for instance, is hosting the Inventing the Future International Symposium in Moscow in October 2025. This event is projected to gather over 7,000 international experts to discuss global challenges, including what they're calling the digital cosmos. It highlights that this isn't just abstract physics happening in a lab, it's a global race. It's a strategic frontier where nations are investing heavily to secure future technological dominance and address complex societal issues.
That's a truly fascinating look at the very fabric of reality, from the cosmic down to the quantum. But let's zoom in a bit, from abstract physics to the biological, to the very nature of human evolution. We've all seen those classic images, right? Early humans striding across the savanna, evolving to run after prey, or foraging for food on the ground. But I understand scientists are now rethinking why we started walking on two legs. Turns out it might have been for a much simpler, perhaps more delicious reason.
Indeed. There's a surprising new theory gaining traction, basically. Humans didn't evolve two legs to run, scientists say. They just wanted some mangoes.
Yeah.
This contrasts sharply with the traditional, long-held theories of bipedalism, which often centered on the efficiency of running across vast savannas to hunt prey or forage for food on the ground, or even just to cool down more effectively.
So not about endurance running.
Maybe not primarily, according to this idea. It suggests a much more arboreal or tree-dwelling origin for our upright posture. It posits that it might have been significantly more energy efficient for early human ancestors to stand upright in trees to reach fruit on branches, rather than expending all that energy climbing up and down constantly.
Standing up in the tree.
Yeah.
To grab fruit.
Exactly. Imagine a scenario where a tall, upright stance allowed for easier access to nutrient-rich fruits, like those delicious mangoes, on sturdy branches. This hypothesis offers a simpler, less energy-intensive, and perhaps more frequent reason for developing bipedalism than the high-stakes demands of a predator-filled savanna. It highlights how environmental pressures, even seemingly mundane ones like fruit accessibility, can drive profound evolutionary changes in unexpected ways.
So all that grand narrative of the hunter on the savanna, and it might just come down to a very strategic snack acquisition. That's surprisingly relatable. Speaking of our planet and the evolution of life, here's a story that truly brings home the immediate, tangible impact of environmental changes on our ecosystems. And it's a big grim.
It is indeed. There's been a massive sea star die-off, just devastating numbers. Over 5 billion sea stars have perished along the west coast of North America. This epidemic, which actually began way back in 2013 and has continued for over a decade, while the primary mystery seems to be solved, it's linked to a specific strain of Vibrio bacteria.
Vibrio, like the bacteria that can make people sick from seafood.
Exactly that family. And what's even more concerning, and directly connects to broader global challenges, is that this bacteria's virulence, its nastiness, is significantly exacerbated by global warming. The warmer ocean waters act as a supercharger for the Vibrio. It causes these once vibrant creatures to quite literally melt into slime.
Oh, that's horrific.
It's a terrible image. And the ecological ripple effects are devastating, particularly for critical kelp forest habitats. You see, sea stars are crucial predators of urchin populations. Without them, urchins can proliferate unchecked, just devouring entire kelp forests and turning them into what are called urchin barrens. These barrens support far less marine biodiversity.
So it throws the whole ecosystem out of whack.
Completely. And it has broader implications beyond just the ecosystem. Rising Vibrio infections due to warming waters pose potential risks not just to marine life, leading to more die-offs, but also directly to human health through things like contaminated seafood or even just recreational water exposure. It highlights the undeniable interconnectedness of planetary health and human health.
That's a truly disturbing image, sea stars melting into slime. It really puts the warming waters into stark, horrifying relief. But it's not all bleak news, is it? We often hear about environmental degradation, but what about success stories? Are there any?
You're right, it's not all grim, and there are powerful examples of positive change when action is taken. We have a very encouraging environmental health story from the United States, specifically in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Following the closure of the Shenango Coke Works coal plant back in 2016, there's been a dramatic improvement in local air quality, and directly linked to that in public respiratory health.
Oh, really? How much is an improvement?
Researchers found some pretty impressive statistics. There was a 20% decrease in weekly emergency room visits for respiratory issues. And get this, a remarkable 40% decrease in pediatric asthma visits immediately after the plant shut down. And this plant, mind you, had a long history of regulatory violations.
What kind of stuff was it putting out?
Really harmful pollutants like benzene, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter, things known to cause cancer and major respiratory problems. The data provides a clear, undeniable, and almost immediate link between reducing industrial pollution and a tangible improvement in public health outcomes. It's a powerful testament to how decisive environmental action can directly benefit communities, and it really underscores the importance of stringent environmental regulations.
That Pittsburgh story is genuinely heartening. It shows that even in the face of daunting environmental challenges, targeted, effective action can make a real difference almost immediately. It's a blueprint, almost. But as we explore these amazing scientific discoveries, from quantum reality to evolutionary biology and the immediate impact of environmental policy, a vital question arises, particularly for you, our curious listener. How much can we really trust what we're told, especially in science?
This is a crucial concern for the integrity of science itself. There's a growing problem of fraudulent research, basically destroying trust in science. And we're not just talking about isolated incidents or accidental errors here. There are increasingly sophisticated, organized networks, sometimes referred to as paper mills.
Paper mills.
Yeah, outfits specifically dedicated to publishing fake studies. These operations generate bogus research, often using fabricated data, manipulated images, or plagiarized text, and then they try to get it past traditional peer review processes, often by targeting less rigorous journals or even leveraging compromised reviewers.
Well, that sounds widespread.
The scale is alarming. We're talking hundreds, even thousands of retracted papers attributed to such fraud, especially in critical fields like medical research, where false findings can directly impact public health and patient care. It's a significant challenge for modern science because the integrity of the entire scientific enterprise relies on trust in its findings.
So what's the upshot?
It means the scientific community, and indeed the public, needs to exercise heightened vigilance. We need better mechanisms to detect and prevent such fraudulent activities, because it genuinely undermines the credibility of scientific discovery and, by extension, public trust in science as a whole.
Right, a crucial challenge. Okay, shifting gears now from the microscopic workings of the universe and the health of our planet. Let's turn to the geopolitical complexities that shape our world. The situation in Gaza remains deeply troubling, doesn't it? With ongoing humanitarian crises and intense political maneuvering, both internally within Israel and on the international stage.
Yes, the reports paint a very difficult picture for any path forward there. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reportedly decided on a plan for a full occupation of Gaza. This plan, however, faces significant opposition from his own military chiefs. They're warning of a protracted, long-term conflict and, crucially, an increased risk to the remaining hostages held by Hamas.
And the humanitarian situation. We keep hearing dire warnings.
It's incredibly dire. UN aid teams are issuing stark warnings of looming famine-like conditions across the Gaza Strip, particularly in the northern areas. Disturbing videos have emerged, published by Palestinian militants, showing emaciated Israeli hostages. This has sparked global outrage and intensified calls for their release. We heard from Ile David, the brother of one of the hostages, Eviatar. He described his brother as a human skeleton in a Hamas video. He called it a new form of cruelty, which really underscores the immense human suffering and psychological impact of this conflict on all sides.
It's awful.
And beyond that, there have been distressing reports of attacks on Red Crescent staffers by the Israeli military, which further exacerbates the already monumental aid delivery challenges into Gaza.
It sounds like a horrific humanitarian crisis, compounded by deeply entrenched political and strategic disagreements, even within Israel's own leadership. What about the political struggle unfolding domestically in Israel? I heard something about the Attorney General.
Yes, domestically in Israel, there's an intense political struggle unfolding that has significant implications for the rule of law. The High Court intervened to halt Prime Minister Netanyahu's attempt to dismiss Attorney General Gali Baharov Miara. This move is highly significant because Baharov Miara is currently prosecuting Netanyahu in an ongoing corruption trial.
So he tried to fire the prosecutor who's prosecuting him.
Essentially, yes. The cabinet had unanimously voted to fire her, a move that critics argue was a direct attempt to interfere with his trial. But the court issued a temporary order freezing the dismissal, citing a clear conflict of interest. This drew immediate and sharp criticism from opposition parties and watchdog groups. They cited concerns about the politicization of the legal system and a blatant conflict of interest on Netanyahu's part. It's really a critical moment for the independence of Israel's judicial system amidst a wartime government.
And internationally, how is this being viewed?
From an international perspective, the former European Union foreign policy chief Josep Borrell has been quite vocal, delivering sharp criticism. He accused the EU of being complicit in Israeli crimes through inaction. Borrell pointed out that a significant portion, maybe a third, of the bombs used by Israel are manufactured in Europe. And he argued that the sanctions imposed on Israel are inadequate when compared to actions taken against other countries for similar offenses. He warned that the EU's continued inaction could tarnish its international reputation, suggesting a moral and diplomatic cost to their current stance. It highlights a growing rift within the EU's own diplomatic circles regarding the conflict.
And speaking of international involvement, the U.S. continues to play a role. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson recently visited an Israeli West Bank settlement. That's a move that certainly sends a particular, and for some, controversial message globally regarding U.S. policy and its stance on the conflict.
Indeed. Moving now from the specifics of this fraught conflict to the complex, broader web of global trade and diplomatic maneuvers, we see tensions and realignments in many regions of the world. Let's first look at the ongoing dispute between the United States and India regarding India's significant oil imports from Russia.
Right. India's buying a lot of Russian oil, isn't it?
A significant amount. India has strongly defended its actions, citing economic necessity and global market shifts following the conflict in Ukraine. This comes in the wake of former U.S. President Donald Trump's threats of harsh tariffs on India. He accused the nation of funding war in Ukraine by continuing to purchase Russian oil.
How did India respond to that?
With a robust counteraccusation, India has pointed to what it calls Western hypocrisy. They highlight that significant trade volumes still exist between the European Union and Russia, essentially saying, you engage in trade with Russia too, so why single us out?
Makes sense.
And what's truly revealing here, adding a fascinating layer of complexity, is a video that surfaced showing a former U.S. ambassador actually admitting that Washington encouraged India's oil purchases from Moscow in the first place.
Encouraged it. Why?
With the intention of helping to stabilize global oil prices. This directly contradicts some of the public criticism and reveals a complex, multifaceted strategy behind the scenes.
That's a classic example of public statements clashing with strategic realities, isn't it? It seems everyone is trying to protect their own interests while navigating a very complex global economy. And these tensions extend beyond just oil, right, into other critical sectors like steel.
Absolutely. This brings us to broader EU-US trade tensions. German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil recently visited Washington, D.C. to meet with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, primarily aiming to secure a tariff exemption for German steel. This visit follows a previous EU-US tariff deal that German officials found unsatisfactory, highlighting ongoing friction points in transatlantic trade.
I remember hearing criticism about an energy deal, too.
Yes, you're recalling former EU foreign policy chief Josep Borrell again, whom we just heard from regarding Gaza. He also strongly criticized the EU's prior $750 billion energy pledge to the U.S., particularly concerning natural gas purchases. He was quoted saying it was not feasible and more of a surrender than a negotiation, implying the EU yielded too much power in the deal.
And others in Europe felt the same way.
Apparently so. Other prominent European officials, like Marine Le Pen in France and even President Emmanuel Macron, have also labeled the deal a fiasco, citing its perceived imbalance and the EU's seemingly submissive position. It reveals significant dissatisfaction within European leadership regarding their trade relationship with the U.S.
It sounds like there's a lot of finger-pointing and strategic maneuvering going on, each major player trying to protect their interests while navigating a very complex global economy. And speaking of global trade and industrial power, an Indian startup is making waves, showing how innovation can fit into this strategic landscape.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jet Aerospace, an Indian startup, recently raised $11 million. They're scaling up production of metallic components for aero engines and aerostructures. Their goal is twofold, and both aspects have significant strategic implications. First, to ease global supply chain bottlenecks in the aerospace sector, which have been a persistent problem. And second, to strategically position India as a key global aerospace component manufacturing hub.
How are they doing that?
They've developed a software-defined manufacturing approach, which they claim has significantly reduced lead times. This makes them an attractive and efficient partner in a sector that often struggles with long and complex production cycles. This isn't just about economic growth, it's about building indigenous capabilities, fostering technological innovation, and securing critical supply chains, which has profound geopolitical implications in an era of heightened global competition.
Makes sense.
And then, looking at regional geopolitical tensions, particularly in the Asia-Pacific, we see new alliances forming and old rivalries intensifying. There's been a significant diplomatic rift between the Philippines and China. It happened after the Philippines flat-out rejected a Chinese state media broadcast. This broadcast claimed to show its Coast Guard towing a Philippine vessel in the contested South China Sea, but the Philippines swiftly dismissed it as fake news, accusing China of recycling old footage to manipulate public opinion and obscure ongoing aggressive actions.
Information warfare alongside the physical stuff.
Exactly. It highlights the ongoing information warfare that often accompanies physical posturing in the highly contested South China Sea, where territorial claims frequently clash. In response to these escalating tensions, Australia has solidified its strategic partnerships. Australia made a landmark $6.5 billion deal to buy 11 advanced warships, specifically Mogami-class frigates, from Japan.
Wow, $6.5 billion from Japan.
Yes, it's a truly significant deal, the biggest defense industry agreement ever between the two countries. And it is explicitly aimed at countering China's increasing military activities and assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region. This clearly demonstrates a strategic alignment against perceived regional threats.
Any other alliances forming?
Yes. Further solidifying this pattern, there's the newly established strategic partnership between India and the Philippines. It's focused on boosting defense and security cooperation. This includes the Philippines' acquisition of BrahMos cruise missiles, an advanced supersonic cruise missile system, which significantly enhances the Philippines' defensive capabilities. These alliances and arms deals collectively showcase a collaborative effort among regional powers to balance growing Chinese influence and enhance their collective security.
Okay, let's turn back to Europe. The war in Ukraine continues to evolve, doesn't it? With new challenges and strategies emerging on both sides, as well as significant international ripples that affect global diplomacy and economic stability.
Indeed. On the military front, there was a rather unusual development reported. Russian air defense troops successfully intercepted 6 Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. Drones, they were targeting a freight train in Russia's Zaporozhye region. What's particularly notable, and speaks to the adaptability of ground forces against evolving threats, is that they achieved this using standard assault rifles.
Shooting down drones with rifles.
Apparently so. This incident highlights the increasing prevalence of drone attacks targeting civilian infrastructure like trains and gas stations within Russia. It signifies a tactical shift in the conflict, perhaps.
And the bigger picture, the U.S. strategy.
In terms of broader strategy and international pressure, the U.S. is reportedly considering its next steps. The U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, suggested that targeting Russia's partners with sanctions and tariffs could be the obvious next step in U.S. mediation efforts. This approach is seemingly backed by former President Donald Trump's stated impatience with the conflict's slow progress, and his threats of secondary sanctions if a deal is not reached by a certain deadline.
How's Russia reacting to that?
Predictably, they vehemently rejected these sanctions as illegitimate and counterproductive. They're emphasizing their economic resilience and highlighting their strategic pivot towards Asian markets, particularly China and India, to mitigate the impact of Western pressures. This signals a continued hardening of positions on both sides.
I heard a European leader suggesting Ukraine might need to concede territory.
Yes, a particularly controversial perspective came from Czech President Petr Pavel. He stated that Ukraine must accept territorial losses to survive as a state. Pavel's view, which he presented as a realistic assessment, is that given Ukraine's limitations in retaking occupied territories without significant losses, the West should focus more on long-term economic and political tools to support Ukraine rather than purely military force. He expressed skepticism about Ukraine's chances for a decisive breakthrough in a counteroffensive and urged a realistic assessment of the situation.
That must be hard for Ukraine and its allies to hear.
Absolutely. This viewpoint clearly starkly contrasts with the stated goals of Ukraine and many of its Western allies who continue to advocate for full territorial integrity. And it highlights potential fissures within the Western alliance regarding the long-term strategy.
And internally, Ukraine is still dealing with corruption issues.
Yes, internally, Ukraine faces its own significant challenges, including persistent issues with corruption. Several high-ranking Ukrainian officials, including an MP from President Zelensky's party and former regional governors, have been detained. They're accused of involvement in a large-scale military bribery scheme.
Bribery on military contracts. During a war.
Exactly. This alleged scheme involved kickbacks of up to 30% on military contracts for critical equipment like drones and electronic warfare systems. This led to grossly inflated prices and the misappropriation of critical defense funds at a time when the country is fighting for its survival. President Zelensky himself condemned the scandal, calling it absolutely immoral. This, of course, is a significant blow to the country's efforts to project an image of reform and integrity amidst the ongoing conflict, and it presents a challenge to continued international aid and support.
That's tough. Any other international angles?
Adding another international layer, Moscow released a list of countries whose citizens allegedly participated as foreign mercenaries in a Ukrainian incursion into Russia's Kursk region. The list included individuals from Brazil, Colombia, Denmark, and the United Kingdom, among others. This list, whether for intelligence purposes or propaganda, highlights the transnational nature of the conflict and the involvement of foreign fighters on both sides.
What about the threat of the war spilling over, say, to NATO?
Well, in a different vein, and perhaps a counter-narrative to some of the more alarmist headlines, Major General Andreas Henn from the German Army's Homeland Security Division dismissed speculation of a direct Russian attack against NATO as nonsense. He stated that Russia is currently too focused on the Ukraine conflict and its immense resource demands to consider such a move, offering a more pragmatic and less escalatory assessment from a key European military official.
Okay. And Russia's alliances elsewhere.
Finally, the enduring Russia-Syria bond remains strong. Reports highlighted Russia's crucial role in Syria's post-war reconstruction efforts and the strategic partnership between Moscow and Damascus, underscoring their mutual interests and contribution to regional stability in the Middle East. This illustrates how geopolitical allegiances are deepening and shifting in various parts of the world, often in response to global events.
Right. Beyond these major conflicts and strategic realignments, political landscapes are shifting globally, often with direct impacts on civil liberties, economic opportunity, and national narratives. What else is happening?
That's right. In Moldova, there's been a controversial move that has drawn international attention. The jailing of regional opposition leader Yevgenia Gutsul, who is the head of Gagotsia, an autonomous region within Moldova. She was sentenced to 7 years in prison on charges of illegal financing of a banned Eurosceptic party.
Politically motivated, she claims.
She vehemently denies the accusations, claiming the case is politically motivated, and a substantial fine was also imposed. This raises significant concerns about political dissent, freedom of association, and judicial independence in the country, especially given Moldova's complex geopolitical positioning between Russia and the European Union.
And migration issues are always in the news.
In a different diplomatic maneuver that speaks to global migration challenges, Rwanda has agreed to receive migrants deported from the United States. This is in exchange for support from Washington. The deal outlines that deportees will receive workforce training, healthcare, and accommodation support to help them integrate into Rwandan society. Rwanda, which has its own history of large-scale displacement, retains the right to approve each individual for resettlement, ensuring a degree of control over who is accepted.
Is this linked to U.S. policy shifts?
It's contextualized within the Trump administration's active pursuit of deportations to third countries, an approach that has drawn both support from those prioritizing border enforcement and strong criticism from human rights advocates.
Interesting. Any other shifts in diplomacy?
And speaking of interesting diplomatic shifts, there's a fascinating strategic trend emerging in microstate diplomacy. Using Singapore and St. Kitts and Nevis as prototypes, it challenges traditional notions of global power. The idea emphasizes that in today's increasingly interconnected world, credibility, institutional coherence, and clarity of purpose are increasingly more important for global influence than traditional markers like military might or sheer market size.
So small countries can punch above their weight.
Exactly. Proposed initiatives such as a joint digital resilience hub and a center for legal and regulatory innovation between these microstates demonstrate a forward-thinking approach where small states can carve out significant influence through smart, collaborative strategies rather than relying on conventional measures of power. It's kind of a redefinition of what it means to be a powerful player on the global stage.
Okay, fascinating. Let's turn to the economy now. Always a fascinating mix of data, policy, and human impact, touching on everything from stock markets to labor disputes and corporate governance. Where do we start?
Kicking off with the U.S. stock market, we recently saw a rather counterintuitive but significant rally. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rallied 500 points, managing to claw back nearly all of Friday's losses, which had followed a surprisingly weak jobs report.
Wait, a weak jobs report caused a rally. How does that work?
Well, this rebound was actually fueled by intensified investor bets on potential Federal Reserve rate cuts. The logic here is that a weaker jobs report signals a cooling economy, which in turn might prompt the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates sooner to stimulate growth. So counterintuitively, what might seem like bad news for the economy was interpreted as good news for the markets. It increased the likelihood of looser monetary policy.
Okay. Markets being markets.
Yeah.
But not all the economic news is positive, I assume.
No, definitely not. A major labor and business story unfolding in the United States involves thousands of workers at Boeing plants across Illinois and Missouri going on strike. The reason? Failed negotiations over wage increases and other contract provisions. Even though Boeing reportedly offered a substantial 40% average wage growth over the term of the contract.
A 40% offer wasn't enough. Wow. What part of Boeing does this affect?
This strike significantly impacts Boeing's defense, space, and security business. That accounts for over 1/3 of the company's total revenue, affecting critical production of military aircraft and space systems. Despite this, the CEO expressed confidence in managing through the strike, perhaps hoping to avoid the kind of intense scrutiny and safety concerns that have plagued the company in the past after incidents involving the 737 MAX plane.
Right. Speaking of CEOs and big money, Tesla and Elon Musk.
Yes. Speaking of major corporate compensation, Tesla recently made headlines. They awarded CEO Elon Musk millions of shares valued at approximately $29–30 billion.
$30 billion.
Around that, yeah. A massive payout. It aims to retain Musk as CEO during Tesla's ambitious transition into new areas like artificial intelligence, AI, robotics, and services. This compensation package comes after a Delaware court decision had previously overturned his former pay package. Unsurprisingly, investors reacted positively to this news, seeing it as a way to ensure Musk remains deeply incentivized and focused on the company's future ventures and continued innovation.
Incredible sums. But what of the broader U.S. economy? Any storm clouds?
Yes, a critical assessment comes from Moody's chief analyst Mark Zandi. He issued a stark warning that the U.S. is on the precipice of recession.
Precipice of recession.
He cites several significant reasons for this grim outlook. The ongoing impact of Trump's tariffs, which he argues negatively affect company profits and household purchasing power by increasing costs. And his immigration policies, which are expected to lead to a significant decrease in immigrant workers, crucial for many labor-intensive sectors, potentially shrinking the economy overall. Zendaya also points to a significant slowdown in job creation, consumer spending, and manufacturing activity as key indicators.
How does that square with what the administration might be saying?
Well, this perspective is particularly important as it contrasts sharply with the Trump administration's attempts to, let's say, spin and purge data to declare economic victory, suggesting a potential disconnect between official narratives and underlying economic concerns.
Okay, a cautionary note there. What about elsewhere? Any unusual economic challenges?
In Mexico, ranchers are struggling with a truly unusual and devastating economic challenge. A tiny parasite is ravaging their cattle exports to the U.S., severely impacting their livelihood. This crisis emerged after the U.S. suspended live cattle imports from Mexico's Sonora region due to concerns about the spread of this parasite. It's a vivid and very specific example of how biological factors, even something as small as a parasite, can have profound and immediate economic consequences, especially for agricultural communities heavily dependent on cross-border trade and the health of their livestock.
Wow. A parasite shutting down trade, shifting to Russia. Any interesting labor trends?
Yes, an interesting labor market dynamic is emerging there. Women are now finding jobs faster than men for the first time in 5 years. This is attributed to a combination of factors, including overall staff shortages in the Russian economy, women's generally lower salary expectations compared to men, and a greater willingness among women to compromise on certain job aspects for a better work-life balance.
Faster job finding. But does that mean equal pay?
No. Despite this encouraging trend in job acquisition, a significant gender pay gap persists across the Russian economy. Men still earned on average 27% more than women in 2023, highlighting ongoing challenges in achieving gender pay equity.
Right. Any major energy news?
Finally, on the energy front, a major U.S. energy giant, ExxonMobil, is making a significant return to Libya. ExxonMobil signed a memorandum of understanding to resume operations in the North African nation after a decade-long absence. They're aiming to study offshore blocks for hydrocarbon resources. This indicates a renewed and strategic interest in tapping into Libya's vast, untapped oil and gas reserves, despite the nation's ongoing political instability and security challenges.
And one last bit of financial news.
On a positive financial note to round out this segment, some welcome news for many American households. Mortgage and refinance interest rates have finally dropped on August 5, 2025, offering a bit of relief in the housing market.
Okay, that's a lot of economic movement, isn't it? From the macro trends on Wall Street to individual livelihoods being impacted by tiny parasites and even shifts in global labor markets. Now let's move to the realm of public policy and the critical social issues shaping our communities and nations, touching on everything from environmental justice to fundamental rights. Where do we begin?
First up, a significant environmental and legal victory in the United States, specifically in New Jersey. The state reached a record-breaking $2 billion settlement with DuPont over widespread contamination from PFAS forever chemicals.
$2 billion. What are PFAS again?
They're perber and polyfluoroalkyl substances, highly durable chemicals used in lots of products like nonstick pans and firefighting foam. They don't break down easily. DuPont and its related companies are held responsible for extensive pollution at 4 factory sites in New Jersey. This pollution caused extensive damage to natural resources, including critical public water supplies. And these PFAS chemicals have been linked to a range of serious health issues, including various cancers, hormonal disturbances, and developmental problems.
So the settlement covers cleanup.
Yes, the settlement is substantial. It includes an $875 million cash payment over 25 years, up to $1.2 billion earmarked for cleanup efforts, and a $475 million reserve fund. This case highlights New Jersey's proactive and pioneering stance in setting its own stringent drinking water standards for PFAS, which actually stands in stark contrast to recent federal regulatory rollbacks on PFAS under the previous Trump administration. It illustrates diverging approaches to environmental protection and public health between state and federal levels.
Interesting state versus federal dynamic. Speaking of U.S. politics, there was some drama in Texas recently, with legislators leaving.
Yes, intense drama unfolding in Texas. Democratic state legislators famously fled the state, physically leaving Texas. Their goal was to block a vote on a Republican-favored congressional map. This entire political chess match is centered around gerrymandering, the controversial practice of redrawing electoral districts to create more safe seats for a particular party. In this case, Republicans in upcoming midterm elections.
And the governor threatened them.
There were very public threats of bribery charges and civil arrest warrants against the fleeing Democrats. It turned into a high-stakes constitutional showdown. Interestingly, this debate over electoral mapping extends to California's congressional map, where there have been claims of Democratic gerrymandering. However, experts argue that California's map, which was drawn by an independent bipartisan commission rather than politicians, is not inherently skewed toward Democrats, illustrating the complexities and differing methodologies in this process and how independent commissions can potentially mitigate partisan manipulation.
Right. Always a contentious issue. What's new on the immigration front in the U.S.?
The U.S. has introduced a new policy with significant implications. It's a pilot program requiring security bonds $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 from some B1 and B2 visa applicants. These are typically tourist and business visas. It applies to applicants from countries with historically high visa overstay rates.
Do you pay a bond to ensure you leave?
That's the idea. Consular officers will have discretion in applying this bond requirement. And the bond itself is refunded if the visa holder complies with the terms and leaves the country on time. This is presented as part of the Trump administration's broader immigration enforcement efforts, aiming to deter overstays, and a related incident underscored the real-world impact. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, agents detained a Purdue University student in New York. Federal officials claimed her visa had expired 2 years ago, highlighting the strict enforcement of immigration rules.
Okay. Moving across the pond to the UK, what's happening with migration there? The small boats issue.
In the United Kingdom, a new UK-French one-in, one-out small boats pilot plan is now in effect. This will involve returning some individuals arriving in the UK via unauthorized small boat crossings back to France. However, the Home Secretary has notably refrained from disclosing the exact number of migrants to be returned under this new scheme, which has drawn some criticism for a lack of transparency from opposition parties and NGOs.
And this ties into debates about crime and immigration status.
Yes, it connects to a broader, highly contentious debate ignited by figures like Nigel Farage. He has called for police to publicly share the immigration status of charged suspects in criminal cases, particularly after high-profile incidents. In response to this, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper stated that guidance for police on sharing suspects' ethnicity must change, highlighting the tension between public information, individual privacy, and perceived fairness in law enforcement, especially when dealing with sensitive issues like immigration and crime.
A difficult balance. Was also heard about the passing of a significant figure in UK intelligence.
Yes, we mark the passing of a truly significant figure, Dame Stella Rimington. She was the first female Director General of MI5, the UK's domestic intelligence agency, and notably, the first Director General to be publicly identified. Her passing highlights her immense contributions to national security and her lasting legacy as a trailblazer who broke barriers in the intelligence community. She really transformed the public face of one of the world's most secretive organizations.
A real pioneer. What's happening in Australia regarding Indigenous rights?
In Australia, a prominent Aboriginal group has launched a legal challenge to prevent the construction of an Olympic stadium in Brisbane. They cite the profound cultural and historical significance of Victoria Park, the proposed stadium site, to Indigenous communities. This challenge brings to light the ongoing struggle for land rights, cultural preservation, and recognition of Indigenous heritage. In the face of large-scale urban development and major international events, emphasizing the importance of respecting ancestral lands.
Another complex issue. Back in the U.S., what about abortion access?
Meanwhile, the Trump administration has made controversial moves to restrict nearly all abortions at Veterans Affairs hospitals. This decision has sparked significant controversy across the political spectrum, as it represents a major shift in healthcare policy affecting the options available to female veterans seeking reproductive care.
And gun control in the UK.
Conversely, in the UK, tighter gun restrictions have found strong support from an unexpected yet deeply personal place. We heard from a woman who tragically lost her twin sister and nieces to a shooting incident. She expressed her profound support and hope for the newly implemented firearm licensing rules. Her advocacy underscores the devastating human impact of gun violence on individuals and their subsequent powerful voice for stricter controls, showing how personal tragedy can fuel policy change.
Such a powerful voice. What about security concerns in India?
From India, a disturbing incident highlights concerns about extremism and internal security. The Uttar Pradesh Anti-Terrorism Squad, or ATS, arrested 2 suspects. They were allegedly plotting an anti-India conspiracy and trying to create religious tension. Reports claim they allegedly promoted Sharia law and brainwashed youth through a WhatsApp group that included members from Pakistan, highlighting serious concerns about foreign influence and the spread of radical ideologies aimed at destabilizing the country's social fabric.
And then, for a story that perhaps falls into the realm of you truly can't make this stuff up, I found this one rather unforgettable. A Denmark zoo has actually requested people to donate their small pets as food for captive predators. I mean, donate your hamster to feed a lion? Is that right? I might have to rethink my pet choices if I live near a zoo like that.
It certainly raises some eyebrows, doesn't it? And a whole host of ethical questions. The zoo justified its request by stating it's a way to provide natural and nutrient-rich food for its carnivorous animals, aligning with their natural diet. And also, they argued, to responsibly deal with unwanted pets. However, it sparked considerable public outrage and debate about animal welfare, conservation ethics, and the very concept of responsible pet ownership.
A clash of values, clearly.
Definitely. It highlights a clash, the perceived needs of captive wild animals versus the societal perception and emotional connection many people have with their domestic pets.
Okay. Moving on from pet donations. What about protests using unusual items?
On a related note, but with different social implications, a political protest in Malaysia involving sanitary pads stirred national outrage. This unique form of protest aimed to highlight deeply regressive taboos around women's health and menstrual stigma in the country by bringing a very private and often unspoken issue into the public and political sphere through a visual demonstration. The activists sought to challenge cultural norms and push for greater openness and education regarding menstruation, underscoring how deeply ingrained social taboos can affect public discourse and human rights.
Using protests to break taboos. Finally, a public health update from China.
To conclude this segment with a relevant public health update, the southern Chinese city of Foshan is implementing real name registration for medication to treat chikungunya fever amidst an outbreak. This measure aims to track and prevent the spread of the mosquito-borne illness. By identifying individuals purchasing specific medications, health authorities can monitor the outbreak more effectively and intervene where necessary. It demonstrates a direct, government-led public health intervention in response to an infectious disease outbreak, balancing individual privacy with the collective need for public health surveillance and control.
So what does this all mean? We've journeyed from the very fabric of reality itself and the mysteries of quantum time to the profound evolutionary steps of humanity. We've explored the immediate, real impacts of politics, climate, and economic forces on our daily lives across the globe, and even touched upon some truly bizarre societal shifts, like pet donations to zoos.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes clear that these individual stories, whether a scientific breakthrough in quantum entanglement or a high-stakes geopolitical trade dispute, are all intricate pieces of an evolving global narrative. They reflect the interconnectedness of our world and the constant interplay between human action, natural forces, and our relentless pursuit of understanding. We've seen the profound implications of scientific discovery pushing the boundaries of what we thought possible, the fragility of ecosystems under stress, the intricate dance of diplomacy and conflict, and the ongoing struggles for justice, economic stability, and human dignity. It's a testament to the fact that nothing happens in isolation.
And so we leave you with this provocative thought. In a world where science suggests reality itself might be a moving target that we as observers can subtly shape, and where information can be so easily weaponized, spun, or misinterpreted, how do you discern what's truly real, what truly matters among the deluge of daily news? And ultimately, knowing all this, how do you choose to contribute to shaping the future we all share?